Hi there, I'm Ryan.
I'm Javion. We're going to be talking about social interaction in the workplace, revolving around the issues around it. We're going to go through an entire agenda of things, and we'll go through it.
Right, so this is going to be a different type of video. We're going to go through it and you're going to go through the slides as well. So each time we are going through a new slide, we're going to tell you. Okay, so we're going to go through the second slide. So the second slide is agenda. So we're going to go through the issues with our topic. We're going to state the facts and statistics, and we're going to go through our personal experiences. Then we're going to show you a related video with those experiences, and then we're going to end it off with explaining our solutions to those problems and our conclusions. Okay, so next slide is issues.
So issues revolving social interaction in the workplace revolves around unappreciated work for workplace staff and how that can translate into their personal lives. Whereas if somebody comes into work and they destroy an entire table that a worker does, that worker thinks that somebody didn't appreciate the work they put into because nobody took the time to carefully go through it. Something that would also be translated into this would be mental health. So how a worker can go into work and help a customer can translate into how they feel about themselves and might cause anxiety, stress, depression. Work scenarios can also affect how a customer can feel about a worker, whereas if they try to communicate with the worker and everything goes south, then that customer might think something went wrong, and then the worker might think they also went something wrong. So instead of thinking that everything has a solution, it just translates into everybody thinking something's wrong, and which leads to the worker feeling unappreciated and the customer feeling they did something that shouldn't have been done.
Okay, so we're going to go on to the next slide.
Yeah.
So now the next slide, we're going to talk about the facts and statistics. Okay, so we're going to go to the next slide again.
So general facts and statistics about the workplace is just going through the issues. So how often do U.S. workers experience abuse and harassment? In the first part, verbal abuse and threats within the past month is 13.1% for men and 12.4% for women, which is pretty high considering that's basically more than a tenth. And if that's true, then it's almost 1 in 10 who would be experiencing this. For bullying and harassment, which also includes sexual harassment of the past year, it's 9.6% for men and 11% for women. That's an entire 1.4% higher, which is a lot considering how many people this would involve. Humiliating behavior in the past month is 9.8 for men and 7.9 for women. The statistics generally seem to guide more towards the women being affected more. It also shows that men are being affected as well. Unwanted sexual attention is 0.8 for men and 4.9% for women. Seeing as it's 4.1% more, this is also a general demonstration of how the statistics are more based towards women. Physical violence is 2% for men and 1.1% for women. This is based more from 2015 to now, so most of this might not be too current, but it's generally a big issue considering how much it actually is occurring.
Okay. So we're going to go on to the next slide.
Workplace bullying and violence. So these slides talk about how mental disorder claims and harassment and bullying is involved inside the workplace. So this is not just percentages, this is going by how many people are actually affected. So 1 in 3 women will experience mental disorder and sexual harassment. 1 in 5 men will experience it. If it's 1 in 3, that's more of around 33, 36%. 1 in 5 is generally put around 20%. So that's an entire 13% difference, and that's a higher amount for women. So most of the social interaction in the workplace is revolving around women in that regard, and that is an issue in itself. So almost 37% of workers report being sworn or yelled at in the workplace, and that can be from other coworkers, other customers, or just people visiting in general. So it's not just the customers other coworkers will be worrying about, it's also their own staffs. 22% of workers report being physically assaulted or threatened by patients or clients, and workers should not have to worry about their own safety at the workplace unless it's something like construction or welding or something along the trades. But in customer service, they should not have to worry about getting hurt. That is a sociological problem in itself, and that should be corrected. Mental stress claims. 15% result from exposure to occupational violence. So that is customers to workers generally. It's more like a customer gets angry and they want to express their anger in a physical manner to the worker, even if they're just doing their job. 26% made by workers aged 20 to 27 were from exposure to workplace violence. And in this case, people who are older are generally seen as being more mature, so customers might think they have the ability to put their stress onto others, but little do they know this is affecting these people mentally and can also go into their daily lives as well. 31% are made up by workers under the age of 20 from exposure to workplace violence. And that would also include people who are just starting to work. So let's say you're 17 going into turning 18. If they experience violence like that, that could traumatize them for the rest of their lives. That can impact how they get their second job, their third job, their family life, their school life. That is a period in time where people are growing. So if people are experiencing violence at that time, that could eventually ruin their lives.
Right. So now we're gonna move on to observations and personal stories. So the first thing we're gonna do is observations. Okay. So a couple of things that me and Javion have observed is actually at school. So we go to school every day, and we always forget that the school is clean every day, and that's because we have janitors here um, doing their job like perfectly fine, and nothing is noticeable. And we kind of take things for granted because we kind of ignore them and we don't even acknowledge them. Like it's like we don't even see them, and that's probably how they feel, like lack of attention, or I would say more of lack of appreciation, because it feels like they're invisible, right? So I feel like they work so hard and we just don't even notice it. So that's one observation we've had.
Another observation that we had was when our teachers are teaching us, we don't really realize how much effort they really put into preparing classes for us, making sure that we have the education that we're supposed to be having to this correct curriculum. Like, let's say you have school throughout the week and you go to maybe 2 or 3 of the classes out of 5. We don't realize how much effort a teacher planned beforehand in order for us to have a good day. But if, let's say, 2 students come, then all the work that they put into is only sufficient for 15 people, but they have 2 people. So us not realizing that people are putting in effort for us is something that we need to understand. And this could be translated into when we have our parents doing work for us and we take it for granted because that's what we expect of them. But we don't realize how much work they're actually doing for us.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to our personal stories. So we're gonna go to the next slide. So I'm gonna talk about my personal story, and it's gonna be about my mom and her workplace. So a little background story about my mom is that she works at a hotel, and her job is to do housekeeping. So what housekeeping is basically in a hotel room. She basically cleans everything. She folds the blankets, washes the sheets, cleans the floors, throws away the trash, replaces all the towels and everything. And even though it is her job to do all those things, some people take it for granted, right? So an example is a lot of people go to a hotel, and the first thing they do is like to relax, right? It's obvious, right? So another thing is people like to throw parties at hotels, right? Which is fine, but at the same time, some people may be a little inconsiderate, where they would go and trash the hotel room, and it would leave a big mess for my mom. And it's not just my mom, but all the other employees as well, right? So example would be there was a time when my mom came home and she was so tired, and she told me a story about how the whole wall was ruined. Someone broke the drywall. Another story was when someone vomited on both, like it was a big mess. It was on the wall, the carpet, and a little bit of like the bed. So that was a little tough to replace, and it was tough to clean out, right? So even though it is my mom's job to clean the hotel room, I feel like it shouldn't be anyone's job to go out of their way to kill themselves and work that hard for that situation, right? And it's very, when my mom comes home, there's times where she would still wake up at 5:30 in the morning to make me breakfast, even if I say not to. It's just because that's my mom, and that to her that's her job to take care of me. Scenarios at the workplace can affect my mom and have her bring those scenarios to her personal life, right? And it's very disheartening to hear that she's going through all this, and I feel like no one should be going through that.
Yeah, because people don't really take into account how much work people put in outside of the work life. They may see that somebody's putting in a 9 to 5 job, but they don't see how much work they put for their own lives afterwards. People have school, they have to take care of children, they have responsibilities. But aside from work, this puts on an added stress to them, and it could lead to all the mental health strains that are being recorded now, which is why so many people are experiencing stress and not wanting to go to work because they know that if they go to work, they'll be either harassed or their work won't be appreciated, and that's not something that our society should be accepting.
Okay. So we're gonna go to the next slide, and it's just a slide that shows how an example of how a room can be trashed, and on the lady on the right just shows how sad she is, and no one should be just going through that. Okay. So we're gonna move on to the next slide.
So this video is going to demonstrate how much effort it takes for somebody to put in time for their job and for their personal life while putting at expense themselves.
Right, so we're gonna move on to the next slide, and it's the movie, right? So this is a 3-minute video, and we're gonna have you click it, watch it, and have you pause this video and come back to it when you're done. Hi, welcome back to our video. Glad you came back. So now we're gonna move on to the next slide, shall we?
So this is going to go off of my own personal observations. I work at H&M. I'm a trainer, so I generally show new employees how to do all the new tasks like doing cash, customer servicing, folding clothes, and making sure they know how to actually improve themselves for other jobs. So out of all the people I have trained, I have noticed one thing. Most people don't know what emotion management is or emotion regulation. It's generally the practice of making sure you can handle situations without getting too emotionally involved. So if a customer is angry with you or being violent with you, you know how to handle that situation. You don't resort to violence back. You don't give them attitude back. You make sure to calmly assess the situation and try to handle it as best as they can, or talk to a manager. But from all this time, I've noticed that people don't appreciate the work it takes to actually learn a new job, and new employees are prone to be either sexually harassed or not given the benefit of the doubt when it comes to anything. And that is a problem with social interaction in the workplace, because if the new hires aren't receiving the appreciation and the kindness that they should be having in the job, they might become disheartened when they want to become something different. So in that regard, they usually either quit or they learn how to control their emotions and they move on. But for the most part, we lose a lot of trainees due to customers who don't appreciate them and are either giving them harassment language or actually causing physical violence.
Okay, so we're just going to go to the next slide.
This is an example of how people can be extremely rude when it comes to either boxes, tables with clothes on it, or just packages in general. So for a stockroom, it takes maybe 2 hours to package everything within a shipment and send it out. In this situation with all these boxes, a lot of people need to organize the shoes, make sure they're the right sizes, and make sure it looks proper for the people who open it. The customers in this case seem to have ripped open the boxes, made sure that everything is lying everywhere, and people have to clean this up. They don't expect to have to clean all of this up because they don't expect people to be this rude and disregarding all the work that somebody else has done for them. It's taken for granted that somebody's going to clean it up, so they don't worry about it.
Right, so we're going to move on to the next slide.
How does this relate to sociology? So our topic, social interaction in the workplace, relates to sociology because of symbolic interactionism. How does social interactionism with other people affect how this is going to impact these workers in their daily lives and how it makes them think. So regarding mental health, this might think, oh, I'm going to go into school, and what happened to work might happen to me here. I might do all this work for somebody just to be unappreciative of me later on. And this can also make them have thoughts about either A, changing careers, or B, disregarding everything that they've done previously. So they'll reevaluate their lives and they'll think too much, which will lead to either anxiety, stress, depression, or all three of those things. For our topic, social interaction is something that should be regarded as something that we can all go by.
So now we're going to talk about the solutions. So in this slide, these are our solutions that we thought of that maybe can help combat our social problem. Okay. So the first solution we thought of is to incorporate education of this topic into schools, right? So we thought of solutions like incorporating videos to educate some kids or teenagers, young adults, whoever it is, to help them better understand the relations between customers and employees, the work relations, and how it can affect. So another way to incorporate these videos is through TED Talk videos. So TED Talk videos is just another way to fully understand or better understand how to really relate to the topic.
So generally TED Talks, if you don't know what they already are videos that concentrate on sociological issues. So a lot of the time it will be how people will not go to school and still make lots of money, or if it can regard to people who are learning a certain language and how can they be, whatever.
Try again.
TED Talks are generally videos on sociological issues, so it can be based off of like either natural disasters, or it can educate you on, let's say, working and making your own business without having to get a university degree. And if there's TED Talks on social interaction in the workplace and how people are supposed to be treated, this can also translate into how people are generally supposed to be treated outside of work. And it could be within families, with friends, the workplace, whichever. We'd also like to talk about practicing emotion management and how to accept other people's feelings instead of disregarding what somebody else has gone through and looking through their perspective. Because if, let's say a customer is being rude to a worker, or a son is being rude to a father, they try to look at the reason for that instead of just assuming that this entire situation is one or the other's fault. In conclusion, we would just like to say that work recognition and how people are being...
I have to be like, okay, we're going to go to the next slide.
Oh, you bitch.
Yeah, okay, ready? Go back in, ready? Alright, so we're going to go to the next slide.
In conclusion, social interaction in the workplace is something that should be discussed in schools, in videos, in just the public in general. There's too many people who take work for granted at the workplace, for your family, parents, and for friends. We would like people to actually be educated on the subject and show videos like the one that we showed previously regarding how hard a father works for his daughter, and relate that to how a worker works for a customer and show that to people in different settings. We would also like to show appreciation for everybody and not just focus on the workplace in itself.
Alright, so that's everything that we wanted to address. So I hope you liked this video, and thank you. Thanks for watching.